It's time for another edition of Lewis at Large, 60 minutes of smart talk radio featuring guests from all walks of life in conversation with your host, Warner Lewis. So sit back and lend us your ears for the next hour. Now here with today's first guest is the host of Lewis at Large, Warner Lewis.
Well, welcome everybody to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck, and as always, as promised, we will deliver some smart talk radio into your future. Interesting work we're going to be talking about today, and a very interesting guest. He's Dr. John Day. He is a cardiologist and medical director of Heart Rhythm Services at Intermountain Medical Center in Salt Lake City. He received his medical degree from Johns Hopkins and completed his cardiology training at Stanford University. He's published more than 100 medical studies and lectures throughout the world on various heart topics. He's a former president of the Heart Rhythm Society and currently serves as Utah governor of the American College of Cardiology. Dr. Day, brand new work called The Longevity Plan, 7 Life-Transforming Lessons from Ancient China. Should be a fascinating discussion indeed. Dr. Day, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, we're very pleased to have you here. This is a really interesting story about your visit to the Far East and what you learned there. And so let's do this. Let's do a little setup for our Lewis at Large listeners. Was that part of your plan, was to do this exploring, or was the exploring and discovery happen on just what would be maybe sort of a routine, pleasurable visit to China?
No, that's a great question. Actually, there's really quite an interesting story behind it. At the time I was 44, and the lifestyles all catch up to you at some point. And I was a busy doctor, and like most busy doctors, there were free donuts in the doctor's dining lounge at my hospital, free bagels, free Diet Coke, and I just kind of told myself that I was busy, and this is all I had time for, and lunch wasn't much better, and sooner or later it catches up to you. And by my mid-40s, I was on 5 prescription medications, autoimmune disease, esophagus problems, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, overweight, you name it. I just felt awful. And I speak Chinese fluently, and so I'm regularly asked to give lectures at various heart meetings there in China. And in talking with colleagues, they shared with me this village in China where people don't grow old, they don't get sick, and so that became a quest for me, as I wanted to find out what their secret was and see if it could help me as well.
When you told people what you were doing, were they dismissive of it, or were they encouraging?
Which people are you talking about here in the U.S. or in China?
People, the colleagues that you had in the Midwest, and you told them kind of what you were hoping to discover.
Right. They were very supportive here in the U.S. My family was very supportive. My wife was very supportive. And in fact, as I was doing research, because there was a lot published on these people in the Chinese medical literature, and so I was reviewing that and translating that, and it was really my wife who said, "You've got to go." And so we took our family and what became the first of many trips. And eventually put together a research team. We did genetic studies. We did everything, trying to deconstruct, decode, what the secret is, how they can live. Why are there so many centenarians in this village? How can they get to 100? And they're physically active. They're outside. They're living these lives that are amazing with no medications, no hospitals, no doctors. And so that really became what eventually led to a 5-year quest to try to figure out and deconstruct what their secret was.
Okay, let's start with ground zero. Tell us a little bit about this village in China, kind of known again as ground zero for human longevity. Tell us about it. Anything unique about the physical environment in which they live at all?
That's a very interesting question. And so it's a little village, 550 people, and probably the thing they had going for them the most was geographical isolation. It was in a mountainous area, and so they were cut off from the rest of China, cut off from the rest of the world. And so it created a very unique environment for them in that they had to grow all their own food. They didn't have access to sugar, processed foods, salt, oils. or anything else you could imagine. And so it created a very small community where they had to do everything themselves. They pulled together as a village. They were very socially connected. And so just the geography alone, very amazing. Now, if you talk to the people there, and this is something that we weren't able to bring out in our research, they say that there's a very high levels of geomagnetism in the area and some of these others, and that's something that's never really been proven yet in scientific literature. But if nothing else, at least from our assessment and looking at them, it was just geographical isolation that really offered them huge benefits. Now, that's all changed. The economic miracle of China has now extended to the village, and where it used to be an 8-day journey on foot to get any supplies, through this mountain range, now they've got a big highway that goes through. So everything's changing, and the health of the village is now changing as well.
I'm curious as to, again, people like you come and visit, they hear about it, they make a sojourn there to learn. But for most of the people in that village, do they feel that they're anything special, or this is just kind of the way we've always done it, and we don't get what all the excitement is about?
Exactly. And one of my dear friends there is like the district mayor. And I actually asked him that question. And as I mentioned, until the last 10 years, they were cut off from the rest of China and the rest of the world. And they never knew that their village was anything special. And as I talked with this district mayor about that, he said, we just thought that people living to 100 and was something that was normal. And, and every village has got a few centenarians, and we just thought that was normal. That's what happened. They had no idea. They had no idea that this place was anything special until the last 10 years when it's been opened up to the rest of China.
What about, when you were there, undoubtedly, you're not the first person to travel there that have heard about the longevity that they have there. When you were there, on several of these trips, did you run into other scientists, researchers, et cetera, sociologists, geologists, archaeologists there kind of studying the village for the same reasons?
There now is in the county in China, they have a research center where they have scientists and that. But as far as ground zero, if you will, if in the county where, this is kind of the longevity belt of China. In the actual village, I was the only one there on all of our visits over the during the time we were there, and it was quite unique because most of the researchers that do come through there and are Chinese, and so as far as having a Caucasian research team, or at least leading it from the U.S., that was something quite new, and they were very intrigued by it. But yeah, as far as participating in medical studies and that, these people were accustomed to it. They've been studied by so many researchers in China.
Again, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis, from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio, in the midst of an interesting discussion with Dr. John Day, a cardiologist under extraordinary work, talking about the 7 life-transforming lessons from ancient China. The work is called The Longevity Plan, the incredible story of an American physician's visit to a bucolic village and the wisdom he brought back. Dr. Day, as a doctor, how has this, and again, I want to dive back into the book throughout the conversation as we go forward, but how has this lessons and what you've seen over there, how has it affected your practice or maybe your approach to medicine overall from a 100,000-foot view?
Exactly. And it's both on a personal level and then also with my patients. And, the thing that I've really struggled as a cardiologist is over the course of my 20-plus career is I've noticed that cardiovascular disease seems to be striking at younger and younger ages. And so much of it has to do with our lifestyle, and I was right there. I was going through the same thing myself. And so what the trick then became is how can we transform the lessons of the principles that we learned in this, very small rural village in the mountain areas of southwest China into modern life here in the U.S. And, I figured if it could work for them, it could work for me. And so I started first with myself and, with our family, and then it spread to my patients. And it really changed my approach because so often with medication, as a physician, we treat first with medications, and when medications don't work, then we're talking about procedures or surgeries for the heart. But this is a game changer because so often, especially if you can intervene earlier, lifestyle medicines or following these principles that we learn here in the village can often, in so many cases, get my patients off of medications, avoid procedures, avoid surgeries. I know it did for me. I was able to get off all five of the prescription medications that I was taking just by following the principles. My weight dropped naturally without dieting. Cholesterol dropped in half. Blood pressure dropped more than 30 points. Basically just getting out of the way and letting our bodies heal ourselves.
What is it about in the most advanced country in the world? I think most would agree on a variety of levels, and I would include medicine would be one of them. What is it? Why do you believe that we have, again, unique amount of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, all the kind of things we've all been hearing about for the last decade or so? Why are we behind on this?
That is a difficult question to take on, but when you look at it, the real challenge is we are not eating according to our genes, and that's where we started off with the book. Is that it all starts with food. You need to eat food that our bodies can thrive on, that they can function healthy on. It's like a car. You're not going to put the wrong gas or bad gas into your car. We've got to eat according to our genome. And from a fascinating standpoint, if you look at almost every traditional diet in the world, people have thrived on them except for this modern Western diet or the standard American diet, the SAD diet as we often call it. And we're eating in a way that doesn't work with the way the body was designed to function. But the challenging part is how do you step away from it with the processed foods and everything that are so enticing? And that's where it gets a bit tricky. But it can be done. And so that's where we started the book. It all starts with food, is eating the food our bodies were designed to eat.
So I'm curious as to now, you've taken several trips there. You're known for that. And so the work and the travel was not new. But it is obvious that over the course of these trips, you've become more and more enlightened, more and more convinced that what they're doing is absolutely the right thing to do. What, as you now talk to patients and you talk to various medical societies and you make lectures, are you considered, wow, he's telling us very simple but obvious truths? Or do people look at you now and think, okay, here we go, another guy with another plan?
Go ahead.
No, I'm curious because I would think the reception would be you're certainly respected for the work in the traditional medical fields in which you've endeavored. And I'm just curious whether they think, is this a guy that's sort of gone off the deep end, or is it now, no, this guy now is packing a lot of credibility punch here and we need to listen?
Well, fortunately, at least in our field, there seems to be a growing movement, and more scientific studies are coming out that at least 80% of heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and for other conditions it's even worse, is really can be prevented or possibly reversed just by a healthy dose of lifestyle medicine. And so there is a growing movement now that doctors, especially cardiologists, really need to be prescribing more of lifestyle medicine. Because when you look at the studies, lifestyle medicine works so much better than drugs or procedures. And I think part of what's come along with it is, too many Americans are on too many medications and they're feeling awful. That's not the way we were designed to live. And so I'm thrilled that so many of my colleagues now, and with the research that's coming out, it's all starting to come together that perhaps lifestyle is where we need to focus first before drugs and procedures.
Are you, how hopeful are you that the traditional medical societies and the medical community, not only in the United States but around the world, will embrace these kinds of concepts? And does, for any reason, if you can be objective about it, does the medical community in the United States not necessarily fear this stuff, but still believes that really undoubtedly it's helpful, but it's not a cure-all?
I think you've got all different spectrums there. But one thing that's important to realize is that a lot of physicians are in this too. I was in it. This stuff, sugar, added sugars, processed foods, it's so incredibly addictive. And every social event that you go to is full of it. Finally they've gotten the sugar out of my hospital. But it wasn't until just recently. You could have all the sugary soda pop, unlimited sugary soda pop, donuts, everything at my hospital and about every other hospital around the U.S., and they're giving this stuff away free to the doctors. And so the doctors are in this too, and there's becoming more and more of an enlightenment that this is not right. And it has to change. It's got to change at the medical community level. It's got to change from a country standpoint. It's got to change from a societal standpoint. Rather than subsidizing high fructose corn syrup, we need to be subsidizing vegetables and fruits, and changing our whole approach. And so it's going to take a concerted effort from everyone.
What about, and again, I don't want to take too much thunder away from this really interesting book called The Longevity Plan that you've done, but let's just real quickly, it just kind of off the top of your head, let's go through it. What should we have for breakfast? Give us a quick sample breakfast from what you believe.
I think for breakfast, there's high variability. There's no specific diet, and the important thing is everybody is a little bit different. Everybody reacts a little bit different. What works for one person may not work for another, but there are general principles. I think one, and this is where breakfast is where most people struggle. This is where most of my patients struggle, is because most breakfasts in the U.S. are nothing more than processed carbohydrates. Whether it's a bagel, whether it's breakfast cereal, or what have you, and that interferes with our body's metabolism. The next thing you know, blood sugar levels are spiking high, then you get high insulin levels, and it fouls up metabolics in our body, or we're gaining weight, we're running into diabetes issues and others. And so eating in a way that's more natural. For a lot of people, breakfast may be better viewed as just another meal rather than processed carbohydrates. Maybe we look at something else. For me, I like to have a little bit of salmon and a salad as part of my breakfast often. May have some nuts or seeds or some of these others. And so rather than having a special breakfast that is, like I said, nothing more than processed carbohydrates, which are a little more than sugar, maybe we need to look at it a little bit differently. And so I think focusing on real food, whatever meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, real food, stuff that's not processed, no added sugars. And I think if we can just get rid of the processed sugars, or the added sugars and the processed carbohydrates, that's 90% of the battle right there.
What about, and also obviously exercise and just sort of strong mental outlook helps here. What about the role of exercise through all this?
Now, the fascinating thing about this village is if you asked any of these villagers, do you exercise, they look at you like you're from another planet. None of them set out to exercise. They don't get in their cars and drive to the gym and change into their special workout clothes, do their workout, change back, and drive back. For them, physical activity is part of their day, and I think there's something there. How can we re-engineer physical activity into our day? Are there places where we can walk? Are there places where we can bike? Are there things that we can, what can we do to, and that is a challenge, is because our society is such that it's been engineered so that you never have to move. We go from the bed in the morning to chairs, to our cars, back to chairs all day, and then maybe we try to throw in a workout. So trying to incorporate physical activity throughout the day in addition to your workout, living more of the way that they do in the village.
One of the chapters, there's fascinating work here, but one of the chapters is called Find Your Rhythm. Expand on that just a little bit.
There's a lot there, and we are just learning, and you're seeing more and more research coming out. Just, for example, circadian rhythm, the natural 24-hour clock that we have in our bodies is absolutely critical, and people who violate that are much more likely to get cancer, cardiovascular disease, etc. And to try to live in rhythm, try to adjust our days so that we're awake during the day. We get some actual natural sunlight. Maybe we even, can get outside during the day. And then at night, having it dark, eating at relatively, same time periods is to live in rhythm. Our bodies were designed around this rhythm of when to sleep, when to be awake. And it's a challenge in modern society with lights and 24-hour food available and everything else. But to try to be awake during the sun, experience natural light, be in a dark environment at night, and to live your life in rhythm. And I think even more than that, we touch on this a little bit as well, is living in rhythm also doesn't mean that we're multitasking. It doesn't mean that we're living in time urgency mode where we're always running from one to the next. It's about being more mindful and listening to our bodies and finding the rhythm that our body naturally wants to go to.
Okay, we're starting to wind down here a little bit, but yours truly, Warner Lewis, with Lewis at Large Radio, obviously, and we're talking to Dr. John Day, cardiologist and medical director of the Heart Rhythm Services at Intermountain Medical Center in Salt Lake City. Received a medical degree from Johns Hopkins and completed his training at Stanford University. Brand new work called The Longevity Plan, 7 Life-Transforming Lessons from Ancient China. Dr. Day, as we start to wind down here, interesting prologue to the book called Longevity Soup. Tell us about that.
Longevity soup is something that is a delicacy, and they often will have that at lunchtime. And the ingredients, it's especially now with what's happening in the U.S., is hemp. It's like hemp soup with some pumpkin greens in there. And the hemp was a natural staple there in the village. They would use hemp oil for their cooking. They would eat the seeds. They would make it into a soup. And no, it's not. It doesn't have any mind-altering effect, even though it comes from the same plant as marijuana. But hemp seed soup with greens. It has a chalky nature to it, but the villagers say that eating this longevity soup each day helps you to enjoy a long and healthy life.
So you're suggesting hemp soup instead of Rotel dip with Velveeta. Is that kind of the idea?
I think we have the recipe for it in the book. Once a month is probably good enough. That's what I shoot for. But hemp is definitely a health food. It's high in the omega-3s, and it's high in protein and the healthy fats, and so hemp seed is a great food item to incorporate into a real food diet.
Well, the work is called The Longevity Plan: 7 Life-Transforming Lessons from Ancient China. Dr. John Day, co-written with his wife Jane Ann Day. Again, Dr. Day is a cardiologist and a well-known former president of the Heart Rhythm Society and currently serves as the Utah governor of the American College of Cardiology. Dr. Day, really interesting irony here that ancient lifestyle now bringing us to the forefront in many ways possibly of modern medicine, particularly as it relates to health and longevity. How can people find out a little bit more about some of the work that you do and also maybe pick up a copy of the book?
The book goes on sale tomorrow. It's available for pre-order now, and we've been number 1 on Amazon for a couple of weeks just from the pre-orders alone, or going to my website, drjohnday.com, or just going to the longevityplan.com. There you can learn more. There's so much power there to heal if we just unlock it and let our bodies heal themselves with. It will tremendously improve the quality and quantity of our life.
Well, again, thank you so much for spending time with us. Appreciate the research that you've done and sharing some of these ideas, and would love to have you back on again as this thing kind of evolves.
Absolutely. Would love to.
You bet. We'll be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.